shared here with others who maybe weren't able to be with us. And I'm now looking at a big version of myself, so I'm going to go back to gallery view because that's just weird. Okay. So yeah, so just a little bit by way of introducing the evening. Again, I'm just so grateful for this space that's been created, and it really has been co-created, which is a very important value of the North London Buddhist Center's Racial Diversity and Inclusion Kula. So as we were planning this year, we were looking ahead and noticing that Black History Month was coming up and realizing we've never done anything to mark Black History Month, and not wanting to let that opportunity go by without something to mark the occasion. And as Book said, it really every month, every day, every moment is an opportunity to celebrate Black history, and in particular Black Buddhist history. So we've got, there's something particularly in the Triratna tradition that I just so appreciate, that Sangha really emphasizes and has given us, which is this practice of Sangha, and in particular spiritual friendship. And, it's only through the passing of the Dharma, you could say sort of through our own lived experience and then on to those we share it with, that the Dharma has been passed on for 2,500 years since the Buddha, who, by the way, was a Black Buddhist, although he wouldn't have defined himself as a Buddhist, but he was a person of color, who realized something and then talked to his friends about it, and that's how it got passed on. So the first people that he met on the road were folks that he'd been practicing alongside for a long time, and they were like, "Wow, something looks different about you. What's happened?" And he started teaching them about the Four Noble Truths. So there's something really special about connecting, particularly through and with people who resonate with our own lived experience, which is why it's so important. And I feel so grateful to be living at a time where Buddhism is reaching more and more diverse populations. So even I benefited personally from as someone who identifies as a I was going to say as a young woman of color, although I'm steadily creeping into middle age, so I don't think I can say young anymore. But Latinx American, it was really important to me in my early 20s when I rocked up to the San Francisco Buddhist Center that Viveka, who's an Asian American woman and also young at the time, was there chairing the center and teaching. And I immediately had a heartfelt connection with her. So there's something about representation and relevance that's very, very important when we're encountering the Dharma, and can help us to connect through that sense of a common lived experience. So that's something that I really, really appreciate, particularly about, I'm thinking in particular of Vimalasara and Lama Rod Owens, who I also consider close friends and know well and know their practice. I also benefited greatly with Lama Rod's contribution to Radical Dharma, which I'm sure you'll be saying something about, Shakyasiddhi, where he talked about radical inclusivity, particularly as a queer person, and myself identifying as queer could really resonate with that. So there's so much that we can glean. And there's also difference. Yeah. So there's also ways that maybe our experiences in the world and in life are different, and we can also learn from each other. So there's a richness in both how we resonate, and also how different our experiences can be, that can also open us up in different ways. So I hope that's enough by way of introducing what we'll be doing this evening. So it really is, these really are personal talks from people within our community, in particular members of the Racial Diversity and Inclusion Kula, who have personally benefited from and resonate with the experiences and teachings of specific Black Buddhists. So that's who and what they'll be sharing with us this evening. So I just want to welcome folks who've joined us while I was giving our little introduction. So hi, Pearl, nice to see you. Welcome. And also our friend Zenobi's here. Hi, Zenobi, nice to see you here. Okay, so let's just pause and do a little grounding meditation together. Maybe starting with taking a few deep breaths. if it's comfortable for you. I really like to fill the belly with the breath and then exhale. Long, deep exhalation, just to maybe let whatever came before joining the Zoom screen just go, and sense into what it's like to be here now. And while you're taking some deep breaths, I'm going to grab my bell, which I left on my desk. So just beginning here by dropping the awareness right down into the points of contact with the floor. Feeling where the body meets the earth. And allowing ourselves to be held here by the earth, by the ground just beneath us. And as we do this, just noticing if there's anywhere in the body that's sort of bracing against gravity, seeing if we can support, maybe with the breath, these parts of tension or holding to ease and release and soften into the ground. And in the same way that we connect with the ground and the earth through the points of contact, we can also notice the upper body rising into space. Or if you're laying down, the whole of the front of the body opening to space. With each breath, just encouraging the body to really take its place in space. Having a sense of space stretching infinitely in all directions. While we're held here. And then just inviting you to reflect on what it is that's brought you here this evening. whatever the thread of inspiration or curiosity is that you're following. And maybe feeling that intention or that thread in your heart. You could even place a hand there just to contact that part of you. Breathing into it for a bit, grounding in it. Remembering how important inspiration and curiosity are to our practice, and just feeling how it is to sit with these qualities just now in community. For a few breaths here, we can remember the Buddha. You could even imagine that we're breathing in blessings from the Buddha, or if you're more visual, you might want to imagine light or color streaming down and into the body, just receiving all that wisdom from the past that's been passed down through spiritual friendship and inspiration, so that we can receive it here today and each day of our practice. Letting ourselves be resourced and nourished by these blessings. For the last few moments of this practice, just inviting you to let go of any effort that you might be making just now. You could take a few deeper breaths here, resting back in the posture if that's comfortable. Just sitting with what's here now. Okay. So we're going to begin with Shakyasiddhi, who has requested a little bit of music before we get started with the talk. So I will play that in a second. But I also just wanted to shortly introduce you to the group for those of you who maybe don't know Shakyasiddhi. So I think we first met at that Lama Rod event. Is that right? At the North London Centre about 2 years ago.
Right, that's my memory of it. Yeah, yeah. That's certainly the most significant.
Yeah, it was. Yes, that's right.
Past each other in the corridor beforehand, but yeah, that was certainly the most first time we actually communicated in depth. Yes,
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. It was 3 years ago, wasn't it? It was in 2018.
that's right.
Yeah, so that was a wonderful day-long retreat that we hosted with Lama Rod at the North London Centre, and yeah, I just remember running into you, and you were just so happy, and I was just so happy, and we were happy together. And then we did some I can't remember what we called them, but we did some events soon after the murder of George Floyd. We did some events in Hackney Downs, some ritual, didn't we?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Outdoor. Well, to Black Lives Matters events, really, or a combination of Black Lives Matters and Buddhist, London Buddhist events. So yeah, we managed twice, didn't we? And then we got a third time was getting into autumn, and that was yes, it tested our limits, I think.
We did, yeah, it did. But it was wonderful to do that with you. And
Yes.
you work for Karana.
Beg your pardon?
You work for Karana.
Yes, sure. Yeah. I don't know if everyone here knows Karuna Trust is a charity, really, a charity that works in India and Nepal, amongst the most disadvantaged, amongst mainly the Dalit and tribal communities. So the very bottom of the heap, unfortunately. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, in fact, you can find out much more on the website. But it's a really good charity and the right livelihood as well. So we are practicing all the qualities that we like to develop: friendship, cooperation, compassion. Putting those into practice.
Thank you. And how long have you been in the order, Shakyasiddhi?
Oh my goodness, I've been in the order as long as Lalita Raja, if that's
23
possible to imagine.
23 years.
Indeed. Yeah.
So I'm going to go ahead and share my music.
Right. Okay.
And that was the other thing I wanted to say about you, Shakyasiddhi, is that you are a musician. So all the music this evening.
Firing. Yes.
So thank you for that. So we'll just have a little bit of this piece of music here for just a minute.
Just a minute. Yeah, that's great.
Over to you.
Thank you, Singer Shri, and thank you for the opportunity to give a talk. It's a real honor. It's a real privilege to be talking about inspiring Black Buddhist teachers during Black History Month. So yeah, thank you for the opportunity. And I should warn you that this talk potentially could be a bit free range. It might stray into all sorts of strange areas, which I'm not quite got to grips with. However, let's make a start. So firstly, I just wanted to say a little bit about the music. It's coming up in the chat. And that track was one by John Coltrane. And I'm still sort of getting over the fact that we played it in this context, because I've heard it so often at home and in other areas. But it's just quite amazing to have it during Sangha, to hear it during Sangha Night at the North London Buddhist Centre. So that's made my evening already. Everything else is a bonus, really. So yeah, so that was John Coltrane, and some of you will know that he was a jazz saxophonist and composer in the 50s and 60s. And during his very tragically short life, he not only changed the course of jazz history, but also took it in a, what we might call a spiritual direction towards the end of his life. Yeah, I would say he's been one of the most important and consistent sources of inspiration for me, outside of the Dharma, so-called outside of the Dharma. Yeah. So yeah, so he took jazz in a spiritual direction. Lots of people sort of followed him. I mean, he wasn't the only one, but he was one of the most important people there to do that. And during that, he produced this, some would say his masterpiece, The Love Supreme, which is this. Yeah, and what was I going to say about that? Completely forgotten. Anyway, the piece at the beginning, and hopefully, if we can, the piece at the end, will be from A Love Supreme, a suite he composed while he was sort of, intensely spiritually inspired. And I'll just read you a quote, and then we'll move on to our main subject. So this is from Coltrane. My music is a spiritual expression of what I am, my faith, my knowledge, my being. When you begin to see the possibilities of music, you desire to do something really good for people, to help humanity free itself from its hang-ups. I want to speak to their souls. So that's just, yeah, he said many things, but that's an example of him taking music beyond, purely entertainment or even, technical ability. Okay. Actually, yeah, I've got time to say this. So a bit more about John Coltrane. Some of the structures and titles of Love Supreme, they're sort of quite Christian-y, and he mentions God a lot. He is very into that. And then later on, he sort of started to embrace all religions, Hinduism, Buddhism, all sorts. And for quite a while, I just kept jazz, Coltrane separate from Dharma. I didn't see it as sort of legitimate. But then it occurred to me, well, I make allowances I'm willing to bring, say, Bach and his religious cantatas into the Dharma. So, why not Coltrane? Yes, and I sort of wondered why that was. Interesting question. I'm not going to answer that now. I'll leave that with you. So I better get on to the the actual subject. So when I was asked to give a talk about inspiring Black Buddhist teachers, at first I thought, well, I don't actually know any Black Buddhist teachers. That sort of struck me first. And I realized, well, that's sort of part of the problem, really. Black Buddhist teachers don't have a very high profile, and we don't know. Well, certainly in my case, I don't know very many of them that well. And then Singha Sri, reminded me that, of course, I'd been to Lama Rod Owens's class that he held at the North London Centre 3 years ago. And so yes, you know, there's an example of a very important Buddhist teacher. And of course, there are lots of teachers within Triratna who are very inspiring and wise as well, really, such as, you know, Surya Gupta in London Buddhist Centre, etc. So I went along to this class 3 years ago, not really knowing what to expect. You know, I thought, that's a strange name, Lama Rod Owens. And he's a Black Buddhist, you know, and I've not really come across Buddhists from outside of Triratna, you know, of colour. So I went along, and he wasn't what I expected. I sort of had this stereotypical view of lamas as, you know, sitting up front, usually on a high throne, bestowing blessings and teachings and the like. And Lama Rod was completely opposite of that. He was what you might say very immediate. You could say he sort of came down to us. He was it's very engaging, really. Engaging, very honest, with no airs and graces about him. Yeah, and I think those are the qualities that sort of stuck with me: is honesty, you know, no holes barred, quite sort of almost too honest, or sort of too painfully honest at times, you know. So that made it very challenging, because then that you either respond to that or you draw away and you think, oh, actually, this is too much for me, you know. And there's that sort of dichotomy, if you like. So yeah, no airs and graces. So that was the sort of first thing that struck me. And then the second thing that struck me about that day was the sheer diversity of the people who come along. There were Black people, gay, transgender, you know, very different, I have to say, from what I was used to at North London. And so I thought, well, you know, Lama Rod's here, he's given us a vision of how our Sangha could be, how diverse it could be, how vital it could be. So that was a real gift, a real vision. And, you know, now it's up to us, you know, the idea, the racial diversity, inclusivity, Kula, that's quite a mouthful, and just our Sangha in general to now work for transformation, transforming in light of that vision. So that was a real eye-opener. And that's sort of struck me, really. Oh my goodness, right. So I don't know a great deal about Lama Rod, to be frank, not a great deal factually about him. He's from the Kagyu lineage, and his first teacher was Surya Das, and his root guru is Norla Rinpoche, who I don't know. So Norla Rinpoche made him a Lama after the traditional 3-year retreat. So yes, he's steeped in that tradition. And as I've already said, his approach is very much radical, honest, body-centered. He's the co-founder of Radical Dharma, which Sangha Sri mentioned earlier. And that's, how can I describe it? It's a movement, if you like, which, well, this is what I get anyway. It may not be the official title of it, but it's a movement which challenges, I've got here, challenges and displays the dominant narrative. So on which, so much of our understanding is dependent on. So, and all our assumptions as well, our sort of cultural assumptions. And I was listening to a talk of his fairly recently, actually, and he calls himself a pain in the ass. So he's bringing up these subjects, continuously bringing up these subjects, which are, difficult, problematic, if you like. So, for example, the nature of racialized trauma and the part we all play in that. And these are very difficult subjects, and not necessarily what you might want to hear if you want a sort of nice Dharma life. Now he's written a book called Love and Rage, and that's on my reading list. I've read a few pages of it, but just the title is brilliant. That's I just think that's won me by itself. So yeah, it's something I definitely want to look into, because he talks a lot about anger and how anger and love can coexist, within us. And anger isn't something wrong, or we run away from. He says we can own our anger, but not have to operate from it. So don't start blaming others or doing the other things that anger can sometimes provoke in us. And this is great. He says, anger brings us back to our woundedness, back to our trauma, the hurt beneath the anger, which then connects us to others. Yeah. So quite a different way of looking at anger, like it, right? And Lama Rod himself can be quite angry when he's up front, and can put us on the spot, as I said earlier. So during that talk that I was watching, he was saying things like, well, our silence will not protect us, which I think is great. And he quotes Martin Luther King to say, there comes a time when silence is betrayal. So very pokey, that's, if by not calling things out, we are complicit in a lot of what goes on. And then this is the one that really killed me. Yeah, passive aggression happens when we are afraid and or disconnect from our anger. And I completely understand that one, unfortunately. Yes. So there's a lot there basically in his teachings. I say they're well worth looking into. Very different in many respects from the Triratna approach, if you like. So it takes a bit of getting used to, but certainly, worth the effort. Right, very quickly, as my time's up. So yeah, just to sum up, what I find in common with Lama Rod Owens and Coltrane is that they bring soul into our practice. That's what I find anyway. And that's really important. I hope I'm not sort of subtly disparaging them by saying soul, because I know that both of them have considerable intellectual rigor as well. So that's important to acknowledge. But the main thing, yes, is that they bring soul into our practice. And of course, I don't mean the Christian or Hindu fixed soul. What I mean is an important emotionally equivalent to our intellectual understanding. And I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Oh, thanks, Shakyasiddhi. So yeah, feel free to use your reactions to give Shakyasiddhi some love and appreciation. Yeah, it's lovely. I love your what you've evoked about the spirit of Lama Rod. In particular, yeah, his edginess, his keeping to push the edge of what's possible in the Dharma space, and his deep commitment to being radically inclusive, continuing to explore how to create a space that's so liberatory for everyone to show up in. So yeah, really appreciating hearing all that from you. One thing also just to say about Lama Rod, because I was just at a Buddhist teachers conference where he was speaking on particularly around the revelations of teacher sexual misconduct across the Buddhist world, and we've had our own experiences of that within Triratna. And he was saying, oh, so many of my teachers have come into disrepute because of their misconduct in the area of sexual ethics. And he's really, really one of the leading voices in the Buddhist world, really trying to push that conversation and get us talking about it and talking about solutions to that, and doing it from a place of deep love, but also a lot of energy that he's transformed from his own anger. So yeah, really, a lot of gratitude to him for those contributions as well. And I loved that you ended with that quote from Bhante about the That's great. I often think of this as the further translation. Each of us, our work is to do the further translation. We've been given what we've been given from our teachers, and then it's our work to do the further translation. And there is something about embodiment right now. It's kind of in the zeitgeist, isn't it? How do we make it real here rather than just up here? Which is also well, anyways, in my work, it's very much in line with the work of decolonization, getting out of the head and into the body, not being cut off anymore.
Sure, yeah.
From our natural, yeah.
Say again?
From our naturalness. Yeah.
Indeed, yeah, from our honesty and just beingness. Yes. Great. Well, thank you.
Thank you so much. So I am aware of the time, so I'm just going to check with Guhyasakhi. How are you feeling? Would you like to go now, or would you prefer we have a break and pick this up later after the break?
Good question. I I'm just wondering how people are, if they want to just take like a 5-minute quick pause. I guess it's been an hour, isn't it? And yeah, just reflecting on things. So I'm happy to take just like a 5-minute break, get away from the screen for a bit.
Okay, yeah, 5-minute leg stretches.
Leg stretch.
In America, a 5-minute leg stretch, just enough time to stretch your legs. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Hi, Guhyasakhi.
Okay, we're back. So I didn't formally prepare introductions, but it was kind of nice doing it in a conversational style with Shakyasiddhi. So maybe we'll do that with you as well, Guhyasakhi. I actually don't remember when I first met you. I'm actually not convinced that we've met in person. Have we met in person, or is it all been on Zoom? You're muted, hun.
I came to one of your Courage to Teach. I think that might have been the first time.
Okay. And
Courage to Teach workshop.
is that in person or on Zoom?
No, in person.
Okay. Yeah. Apologies, I'm not remembering that particular event, but yes, so you've been I have to honestly say, you've been one of the highlights of the pandemic for me.
Oh,
So many things happened in the last 2 years, so many new formations, all on Zoom. And yeah, I so appreciated you reaching out to me when we were forming the Kula a little over,
yeah.
yeah, and you've made so many wonderful contributions to our collective work. So yeah, I'm really grateful to you. And you were just ordained this past summer, weren't you? You
Yeah,
want to,
like 3 months ago.
and do you want to tell folks what your name means?
So Guhyasakhi means she who has the mystery as a friend. So Guhya is like mystery, mystical, or something hidden within the heart, invisible as well. And Saki is friend or of a people, like part of a community, or belonging to community. Yeah, it's quite, yeah, it keeps evolving. I think it was given to reflect something that was seen in me and witnessed, as well as something to grow into, to grow with. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Okay. Do you want me to?
Oh, can I just say one more thing? Because I think you work as an educational psychologist, is that right?
Yeah. So I'm an educational psychologist. I also teach yoga and used to do therapies as well. I want to get back into that a bit as well. Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay, I'm going to pass it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Great. So so I've chosen to talk about Vimalasara. I don't know if anyone here knows her. Vimalasara. Yeah, and I the more I understand about her, the bigger this topic feels. So so it's more they. So I gave them a text to just say that I was going to talk about them, and they said fine, as long as, and I'm just checking, they said they define as a gender fluid non-binary woman. So I picked a selective Vimalasara. I mean, there's so many amazing Black Buddhists out there. It was a little bit hard to pick. And then I realized that the other two speakers were speaking about men. So I thought, okay, I would like there to be a woman. And then the other two speakers were people from different other traditions. So I thought, okay, True Ratna. And then that sort of narrowed it down to about 5 or 6 people. It was just so many. And then I just thought, okay, well, Vimalasara is the most public one with published books. So I'm going to talk about the external journey, some of the accolades that she has, and maybe a little bit about what she's revealed and opened up. So all I've done is looked at some of her books, and at the beginning she introduces herself. So I'm using her words in the public domain. I actually haven't met her in person, though when I was ordained at the public ordination, she was ordaining someone, and she appeared on a screen from Canada to explain why she gave Arya Rakshata her name. So I did. She was actually present at my public ordination in that way, which is quite phenomenal. I've also been on some groups like welcoming liberation groups and things like that with her, and been in like breakout rooms with her, and just really sensed deep. I feel we have a shared connection to our ancestors. We also share. I feel resonate with her because, well, we both suffered from bulimia in the past, though I don't think, I mean, hers just sounds a lot more full on. I don't, for mine wasn't an issue for several years, but I mean, some of her background is quite intense. She grew up in orphanages, foster homes, on the streets. She was incarcerated at the age of 15. But she's authored 7 books, including ones on addiction and recovery, working with anger, fear, and hatred. She's done TEDx talks. She's the chairperson of the Vancouver Buddhist Center. She's led regular retreats for people in 12-step programs to help others with addiction. She's also done plays, box office plays, like being the single person in the play and so on. So it's quite phenomenal what she's done. She's had an honorary doctorate for her contribution to the African and Asian diaspora, and she lives in Canada, as I've said. She's an African Canadian. Okay, so that's a little bit about the external part of her. It's just phenomenal, just phenomenal. And then the bit I think that also drew me to talking about Vimalasara is that they have gone through this intense, deep with a passion for liberation. She talks about and this passion for liberation brought her to Buddhism, and it was the teachings of Buddhism that she took refuge into really deeply, and I think that pulled things through. Okay. And the bit that I feel deeply most inspiring that really carries this through is that she's really on the Bodhisattva path. She writes in her book, I Am Still Your Negro, which won some accolades. She wrote, while so many Black people are still suffering, I commit to using my success in life for the uplift of my people. I stand on the shoulders of my ancestors and walk in the lineage of shamans, dedicating my life to helping people struggling in the hell realms of addictions and addictive compulsive behaviors, symptoms of multi-generational and epigenetic trauma. Until Black lives are valued and equal, I cannot rest from the struggle. I am still your Negro, and I am not your Negro is my truth. I mean, I just find that sometimes when she writes, I just read, I can only absorb little bits of it at a time, and I go over it, and her words just are so powerful. So even just going to see her TEDx talk would be great if you just want to listen to a bit about her. Yeah, so that's a little brief intro to her, and I really feel like I'm coming to the end of time. I want to just dip into two areas that have really resonated with me. One of them is on meditation, because I found that was so key to my own recovery and journey out, and also the precepts. The precepts were another link, and then finally I will just dip briefly into just a few of her words on the topic of enlightenment and Black liberation. There you go. So just really briefly. So I resonate with her journey with mindfulness because I mean, I read her, I feel that her experiences of bulimia, well, I mean, I can barely remember mine. It's all a bit of a blur, but when she can bring that experience and really write about it in a way that helps me get in touch with that struggle, that it was just something that I didn't know what was happening to me and why I was doing the things I was doing and what was going on. I didn't talk to anyone about it. I didn't. And I mean, I ended up getting loads of body work therapy, and I love that feeling of getting into my body. So what I did find helped was meditation. Eventually, I got loads of shiatsu treatments. And for Vimalasara, for her, it was meditation, and she went on retreats. She chanted. She really deepened into the practices, that the Dharma, trying things down. She was inspired by the precepts, and finally, she started to have larger and larger periods of abstinence, and got deeper and deeper in touch with her body and her feelings. And one thing that also struck me is that through the Metta Bhavana practice, she said, I also taught me to love myself. And even when it was hard to meditate, they began chanting mantras, and their voices of self-hatred and resentment began to quieten down. And they also write, I'm sorry, I do switch between she and they because I'm still, I'm sorry when I do that, Vimalasara, but the teachings of the Buddha's Noble Eightfold Path were so transformative to her. And I think one of the things she writes was that finally, they let go. They let go. She writes about this moment where years of therapy, years of trying, and then having a relapse, and then really struggling. And then there's a moment when they let go and realized that there was something they wanted more than the addiction was giving them. And that realization, I think, just took her out. I mean, I don't know what happened after that, but it really gave her courage. And I think that's one thing I do really feel inspired by Vimalasara's stories is the courage and persistence and perseverance. And yeah, I really do. So last but not least, is when I looked at her recent work, which I highly recommend. I hope we might get copies, is on African wisdom. And I've only been dipping into it, parts of it. And she writes that she thought about a collection of works exploring Black liberation through Buddhism. But then she realized that it's more than the boundaries that we put. Liberation cannot be bounded by one expression of it. And she because she said Black liberation has been expressed through centuries in many guises since the day the colonializers kidnapped us, chained us, flogged us, and shaped us into human cargo for the new world. Liberation so they also write, liberation in a spiritual context can mean enlightenment, an awakened mind, acceptance of our own mortality, freedom from the prisons of one's own mind, and a heart mind filled with loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity for all being. And then they write, this can be a big ask of Black people who do not have the same freedom to walk on the streets as their peers, of Black parents who are having to teach their children they don't have the same civil liberties as their white counterparts. So I think I'm really struck by, and this is what I would call perfect vision. Perfect vision. I think I might end on this note, because I've been exploring this week, actually. Was it last week or the week before? Anyway, I thought I would refresh perfect vision in my own Buddhist path. And one of the things I was struck in the Bhikkhu Yanamoli's book on the life of the Buddha was about this finding this middle way between eternalism and nihilism. And if one falls into eternalism, a trap of eternalistic view, if one believes that one has some inherent issue, that suffering is of that person's own making, like that suffering is that person's fault, it's something inherent in them. So that's a trap of eternalism. And then the other hand is a trap of nihilism, by saying that someone suffers and because someone else had made them suffer, and it's totally not their fault, it's totally another person's fault. So it's this trap of nihilism. And the way between this is dependent arising and cessation. And I think it's through that view that an understanding of the systemic history, the history that's happened, cannot be forgotten, that his history set up some conditions that have impacted on others and, cause what she calls these traumas that lead to addictions and so on, and yet also ways out and freedom from this can be found, and that we all need to work together. So I really just reiterate her words as we end, and maybe also celebrate all of us being here, and that sense of our own interconnected role in liberation, that it's not just for an elite few. It's not that some are so oppressed they'll never be liberated or somehow incapable, that it's an innate thing that we can all express in a range of ways. So she writes here, I'll read this again. This kind of sums it up for me. And it's from I Am Still Your Negro, which won some awards. There's so much I could quote from, but I'll just read the one I did again. While so many Black people are still suffering, I commit to using my success in life for the uplift of my people. I stand on the shoulders of my ancestors and walk in the lineage of shamans, dedicating my life to helping people struggling in the hell realms of addictions and addictive compulsive behaviors, symptoms of multi-generational and epigenetic trauma. Until Black lives are valued and equal, I cannot rest from the struggle. I am still your Negro, and I am not your Negro is my truth. And I really love that non-duality in the end that they express. Okay, so hopefully I've done Vimalasara some justice, because it's just phenomenal finding out about her.
Yeah, so feel free to put accolades in with the reactions and seeing lots of hearts and clapping. It's lovely. Yeah, so particularly appreciated your summary of, or the way that you described the inspiration behind her latest book on African wisdom. And that as soon as they realized that, as soon as they started to do the research, they realized, oh, it's so much bigger than Buddhism. It's deeper than Buddhism. It goes beyond, and it also is including it. So she's got lots of Buddhist voices and other voices from other spiritual traditions. And it reminded me of, Shakyasiddhi spending almost half of his talk talking about John Coltrane. It's like, yeah, of course. The inspiration, liberative energy is liberative energy. It doesn't belong to anyone or any one tradition. Yeah. And then also just to say, I think Zanobi is one of Vimalasara's friends, one person on in the Zoom room right now that I know is a good friend of Vimalasara's to just say
I
she's just really good fun.
Yep. I claim her to put her on the path because she discovered Charatna through me. That's my claim to fame. But I can I just say, Guhyasakhi, it was so lovely to hear your talk because I just know Vimalasara as we met when we were in our 20s, and it's just so lovely to get this different view of her because she's always just like a sister to me. So it's just really, I just really appreciated it. It's just made me, I don't know, it's just warmed my heart. And it's hard for me to see Vimalasara in that way. And you just brought that to me. And I just really appreciate it.
Oh, great.
Zenobi.
Good. Thank you. Thanks, Zenobi.
Wonderful. Yeah, so we are so blessed in the movement to have Vimalasara amongst us, and I get a sense sometimes that she's just getting started. So another contribution that we can appreciate, and maybe I'll put the link in the chat as well, is, right after the murder of George Floyd, Vimalasara just got on it immediately with the Buddhist Center Online and said, we need to start to have some conversations. And so she initiated the Courageous Conversations About Race series that went on throughout the summer and were attended by hundreds of people across our tradition. And that really did start a conversation that had never happened before. So she's very good at seizing the moment and making something happen, even out of great tragedy, which is very impressive and such a gift to all of us. Okay, so I'm just aware of the time. It's almost 8:30, and we wanted to get into breakout rooms to have a chance to talk a bit around the three talks. So I just want to check with Guhyasakhi because Elizabeth, unfortunately, is not going to be able to make it this evening. So she's been in touch, kind of intermittently, letting us know that she's stuck at work with an unexpected situation. So is it okay if because she had sent along a video about Buddha-Rakkhita, but I'm just wondering if maybe it's better to just go into groups around what we've already heard this evening. Oh, thanks. So you've shared it in the chat.
Yes, I've sent it to you actually, the link. I can put it for everybody. So just to say, Elizabeth, really was actually part of the inspiration for this evening, and really wanted to share because she's from Uganda and wanted to share about Bhante Buddha-Rakkhita, who's Ugandan Buddhist. So maybe in bearing in time, we could just show the video of her, and I've sent the link. I'd love to see the video, Katya said. So let's see the video, be a few minutes, and you get a sense of this third inspirational Buddhist. And I think what's unique also about him is that he's actually in Uganda, where Elizabeth comes from. And my own experience living in Zimbabwe is that there are Buddhist temples. They tend to be set up by other communities, but there are also Africans drawn into Buddhism. But let's hear the video. Thanks.
Right. Do you want me to cue it up then, Guhyasakhi?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Why not?
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. Just bear with me because I think there's. Oh yeah, no, I've got it now. Just gonna share my screen. I hope this works because sometimes when I share video, it doesn't. It can be a little bit jumpy, but hopefully this will work. Okay, can you all see that?
This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
In Uganda, a resident monk is teaching young people to embrace the values of Buddhism while trying to correct misconceptions about a religion that's widely misunderstood in Africa. CGTN's Hilary Ayasega spent a day at a Buddhist temple in Entebbe, central Uganda, and filed this report.
Bhikkhu Buddha-Rakkhita leads devotees in prayer. He's the first Buddhist monk in Uganda. Raised a Catholic, Buddharakita converted to Buddhism in 1990 after interacting with two Thai monks while studying in India.
They had a beaming smile. They are very generous, very kind. I mean, just looking at them, you just feel so peaceful because of their kindness, just coming out of their heart. So I was attracted to their personality.
In 2006, Uganda Buddhist Center opened its doors to the public. Buddharakita sees Buddhism as a solution to Africa's problems.
If you're human and you have problems, Buddhism is for you because it teaches suffering, cause of suffering, the end of suffering, and the way to end suffering.
Buddharakita has so far trained and ordained 3 monks, 2 of which have moved to Asia for further monastic training. He's now grooming 5 others, like 14-year-old Nsubuga Sadarakita, the son to one of the monks at the temple.
I have learned how to become peaceful and a good person in the world who can help other people or other children around the world.
Buddharakita says Buddhism teaches practical ways to reach happiness, like being humble.
I draw from those teachings of Buddhism, which are similar to African culture, and I start teaching Buddhism here with an African flavor in Africa, because I see a lot of connection, like for instance, generosity.
The life of a Buddhist is not easy. Monks depend on the generosity of others for all their food, which can only be eaten before midday. Hours of meditation and fitness training are also part of the pathway to peacefulness. Most people in Uganda associate Buddhism with Kung Fu or Taekwondo, but Bante says this is not all. They teach them other values of humility, respect, and compassion. And it is these values that are attracting a small group of followers. According to Buddharakita, over 40 people attend prayers at the temple.
They are calm and generous to the community. Their behavior compelled me to dedicate my son to become a monk.
The Uganda Buddhist Center has set up schools and also provides clean water to the community. Buddharakita says he's now on a mission to train 60 monks in the next 5 years who will spread the message of peace across Africa. Hilary Isiga, CGTN, Entebbe, Central Uganda.
This
Wow. Wonderful. I was just thinking it'd be so interesting if in some other world, Sangharakshita and Buddharakita could have a conversation about what it's like to bring Buddhism to their very, very different cultural contexts and probably face similar challenges, I would think. Okay, so we're going to have a little bit of time in groups just to share and talk around everything that's been discussed this evening. And then we do have some questions to reflect on just to get you going, but you don't have to stick to the questions. Really whatever emerged for you while you listened and took in the talks this evening and the video. So the questions are, what resonated with you as you listened? And we'll drop these in the chat as well. So Lali Taraja will drop these in the chat for us. Any way in which you felt challenged by anything you heard? And finally, I just need to look at my notes because I can't remember anything these days. Oh, who or what are you curious about learning more about? So what resonated with you as you listened? How were you challenged? And who or what are you curious about learning more about? And I think given that we only had a little leg stretch, maybe what we'll do is we'll go into groups and then feel free to have a bit of a discussion and stretch your legs. And then we'll come back at 10 to 9. So there's 15 minutes. Sorry, is that right? No, 20. Yeah, 15 minutes. But that includes an extra leg stretch as well. And then we'll close the rooms at 10 to 9. How does that sound? Is that enough time? Yeah, okay. So see you in a little bit.